I just want to let you know of a couple of dates that we've got coming up over the next few months. On Saturday the 23rd of March at 9 a.m, we've got Graham Jones, drugs, gangs, violence, all manner of kidnapping and thievery and robbery. So that's Saturday the 23rd of March at 9 a.m. We've moved it a week forward based on the fact that it's Easter, the last weekend, the 29th, 30th and 31st of March is Easter. We do have Together at the Cross conference that weekend. So we've got Dr. Betty King with us, got John Glass, got Lara Martin leading worship. So if anybody's interested that weekend, Friday night at 6 o'clock, all day Saturday from 10:30 all the way through to about 5 o'clock, and Sunday morning at 10:30. Just a quick one as well, men's breakfast wise. We have Neil Obard with us on Saturday the 27th of April, 9 a.m. Saturday the 27th of April, one shot, one kill, one mission. Is served in Northern Ireland, served in Kosovo, and other areas, military-wise, SAS, sergeant, commander in the army, sniper. So he's seen some interesting things on his journey. PTSD has struggled with, other mental illnesses and various things to come into faith in Christ. So that's Saturday the 27th of April at 9 a.m. So great to have you along to that as well. Just a quick one around why we do gather as men, and we do these men's breakfasts and men's gatherings together. A key for it is connecting men to Jesus, so bringing men to Jesus. Also passion, purity, prayer and purpose. Some of the keys that we talk about in men's lives and pursuit of Christ is passion, purity, prayer and purpose. Proverbs 27:17, it says, iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another man. Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another man. And one of the most exciting and encouraging things about these men's breakfast is the stories and the testimonies. It's fantastic. The food has been phenomenal, but it's more the camaraderie and the connection and the chatting around tables with the men. A few times recently, it's been maybe 1:30 in the afternoon. We've been clearing up. I'm still around, and men have been together talking over tables or receiving prayer. And, it's vital for men to be able to open up, be honest, talk together and chat together. And recently, coming out of the pandemic of COVID, we found that there was loneliness, suicide, there was people that were struggling in various areas of illnesses, levels of and spheres of influence that they were walking in. And some of the facts are that the loneliest people are men between the ages of 25 to 45. And I'll read that again. The loneliest people are men between the ages of 25 to 45. Now, I had to repent of that because I thought it'd be maybe children that would feel lonely, or maybe, no disrespect to older people, but maybe older people that were in elderly homes. And we hear so much on the news, and we hear different stories of how they're abused and used, and people don't visit them. But they say that the most loneliest people are men between the ages of 25 and 45. Most suicides are from the ages of 25 to 45 in men. Most suicides are from the ages of 25 to 45 in men. There's a real pandemic around the UK of men committing suicide. The figures say that 1 in 5 men are thinking about suicide every day. 1 in 5 men are thinking about suicide every day. And also some of the facts in 2022, there were 3,899 suicides in the UK. 3,899 suicides in the UK. In those, 75% of those figures was men. 75% of those figures were men. Men are more sensitive than women to physical pain and suffering. Men are more sensitive to physical pain and suffering. Ladies, we've started a ladies gathering just recently. We had one on the 17th of February, and the first evening over 25 ladies showed up. The feedback has been so positive and so encouraging. The next one is going to be on Saturday the 11th of May. Saturday the 11th of May, again at 6:30 for food. So if you've got wives, you've got partners, you've got friends, work colleagues that are ladies, it's Kairos. Invite them across to that. A lady in our church, Lindsay, runs those gatherings on a Saturday evening. But again, it's just reaching out to women where they're at. Now, ladies, I believe, are better at communicating, talking to each other, being open with each other, having a slice of cake and a coffee. Whereas men, yeah, we can go sometimes and go to a football game or a rugby game. We can go and have a pint and a burger, but actually, do we really open up? And this is what these areas are for. These men's breakfasts are a safe area, a safe location. These are trusted places that you can come with trusted people. Everything is confidential. And, if you need to reach out to us, we do have our email address, which is men@newlifeyeadon.org. So men@newlifeyeadon.org. So if you ever need to reach out, want to send a prayer request, want to ask us for any questions or to meet with anybody, men@newlifeyeadon.org. Please don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer by yourself, but reach out to us. 84% of men are less likely to go to church than women. Yeah, I said that. 84% of men are less likely to go to church than women. If we can capture the men, at the moment the enemy is a shapeshifter. His very name, Lucifer, enemy, means divide, to split asunder. And he's trying to do that in households, he's trying to do that in governments, in councils, in the NHS, in the church. And if we can get the men, then we can get the women and we can get the children. And it's interesting, the First and Second World War, the enemy of the strategy of the enemy was to take out the men, which meant our ladies had to go to work, they had to go down the mines, they had to work in the steel industry. And so I guess many people say it was the booming 60s, the drink, drug, sex and rock and roll that caused us to have a fatherless society, but the enemy's plot and plan was always to remove the man.
I couldn't get hold of him for 3 days and went into the house and I saw a scene in front of me that probably changed my life forever. I went up into his bedroom and in the corner of the room in front of the mirror, he was sat there in the jiu-jitsu fighting position and he'd cut his own jugular. He was a cage fighter, a successful businessman, had a property business, had construction, children. Seemed on the surface that everything was what life could offer. But he was a very, troubled person because he didn't think he could turn to everybody because he was the boss of everybody, the leader. And I can remember looking at that scene, a pile of cocaine, pile of money, him sat there, and I just turned and stood on the stairs, and it was like my life just passed before my eyes of everything that I did wrong when I found my mum on the settee as a teenager. And it became that every bad decision I made after my mum's death, seeing my friend in that position, I knew I had to make some changes, but I didn't know how to change that. By then I was a career criminal, I was a violent enforcer, beat people for money, broke bones for fun, sold drugs, took drugs, lived that lifestyle. But when you see somebody who you love so deeply, just sat in that position, in their own way and poo, and just so, something inside me broke that day that I don't think will ever be fixed. There's some male relationships that we'd fought together, we'd partied together, we'd done business together, but we understood one another. And sometimes, hardened hearts and hardened men, they find it difficult to connect with other people because they don't have an understanding of how they work. Because we were both like alpha male type personalities, we understood one another. So for me, 50% of my strength went in that scene. And, I think we all knew deep down that he was struggling, but not to that degree, and in the way that he did it, which was, for me, it was just so severe and such a horrendous scene. But the ripple effect of that is, at his funeral, there must have been, I'm not exaggerating, there must have been 2,000 people behind the coffin. We carried his coffin through our community, and you know, were like, he felt so alone, and so unloved, and so unwanted, and so unneeded, yet there were thousands of people. And this is the issue with men, is that, you know, we feel that we're not good enough, your self-esteem is rock bottom, you know, that there is nobody to turn to, there is nobody we can speak to. And the thing is that the more I'm on this journey, the more I see the brokenness within the people who know God and know Jesus. The majority of people here today, I believe, would have a relationship with Christ. You know, so it's kind of, this ministry is for the saints. That's what it's for. It's for the saved people. Because the brokenness that we carry is what's hindering you guys and myself in stepping into what God's calling and plans and purposes are for us. It's our own insecurities that hold us back. You know, and it's kind of, that can be rooted in many different things, of some of which I'll cover this morning that I'm going to share with you. But I just want you to just be open to being vulnerable, because, you know, it takes a great degree of strength to be vulnerable as a man. You know, and it's, for me, like I mentioned there, finding a mum on the settee as a 14-year-old, I ran into the kitchen, I started kicking the door and crying and screaming, and one of the gentlemen next door to where we lived, he was like ex-army, you know, grandma shoulders, young man, dry your tears, there's women present, be a man. And those words like shocked me into, you know, kind of trying to, you know, be tougher and be a man. But for the next 20 plus years, I don't think I ever expressed emotion in any way, or didn't know how to be a man. You know, malehood was modelled to me from my mum dying at 14. My sister used to run pubs. She used to work for the Whitbread Breweries, so she used to oversee pubs. So I was living in pubs upstairs, and the men in the pubs were fighting, arm wrestling, gambling, womanising, all that kind of stuff. So that's what I thought a man was. So I started to mimic that behaviour and watch that behaviour. As a young boy, my father had left when I was 8 months old. I was told I was just on the floor in the doorway, my mum was begging him to stop, not to leave her, and he's kind of got his bags and stepped over me. And again, then those words being told to me by my mum and my sisters that, you know, that this guy just stepped over you, didn't even move you out of the way, you were like a stepping stone to our life. You know, I had such a hatred for this person I never knew or never met. But it left a gaping hole inside me, because I just felt completely abandoned. And that, you know, why wasn't I wanted? And then as a young boy, kind of used to make these fantasies. If I had a dad, it'd be like this. If I had a family, it'd be like this. If my dad would be like this, and start to create these false things of having that father figure. I was genuinely blessed with some great football and then rugby coaches who put time into my life, you know, and a lot of the skills that I picked up along the way were because men and leaders invested into young people, which is, you know, were massive for me. But looking back at those years, all I could ever see and remember is violence. You know, being beaten in the home, beaten on the streets. Wherever I went, I seemed to get as if I give permission for people to hurt me and to harm me. You know, I was violently raped by men as a young boy. I was abused by my sister's friend, who was a black lady. So I became extremely racist, because that somebody black used to trigger this abuse, and it wasn't even on a level that I could comprehend. But the craziest thing is the first person that God brought into my life to meet me at my darkest broken point was a black man, who introduced me to the Jamaican culture and, you know, and his family, and took me under his wing as a mentor for the next 5 years. And, you know, it's like, can remember him saying, he said, you wouldn't erase the bone in your body, you just love everybody. But sometimes when we're tainted by trauma and abusive situations, our perception is not the reality which it really is. So, I didn't have a problem with people, per se, who were black. What I had a problem was that I was abused by somebody. So it was the abuse, it wasn't the colour of the skin. I was also, abused by white people. So what happened then is that for me is that this fermented, unresolved stuff and this ringing in the head, be a man, don't show emotion, dry your tears, with all this abuse and violence, at the point of seeing my mum on the settee like that, something inside me just snapped. And I genuinely believe that day, that's when rage just entered my life, and I went from being the victim to saying, no more, I'm never going to be a victim again. And I can remember going out onto the field. All the bigger lads used to kick me up and down, and one tried to do it, and I just hit him. He went to the floor, then he started to carry up, please no, don't, Alan. And I felt this like surge of power. And in his vulnerability and in his fear, I saw power and control. And unfortunately for me then, for the next probably 5 or 6 years, I thrived off of that. Because I've always been the weaker person or the victim. So that in itself starts to develop controlling, violent tendencies and behaviours, which as a man is not a great characteristic to carry, because when you then start, obviously a few years later you start getting into relationships, you've become controlling and dominant and violent within those relationships, and it's so negative. But all the way through that, I was just that little scared little boy who's running from all these people that had hurt me. And from the age of 14 up until 17, nearly 18, I worked on my physique, like a robot, like a machine. I literally trained, and I started playing rugby when I was 12. As soon as I picked a rugby ball up, it just came natural. I always wanted to be a footballer, play for England and do all that, but I just simply weren't good enough. But when I picked a rugby ball up, it was natural. And the game suited me. It was like, I used to call it legalised violence. I could inflict as much harm as I possibly could, and try not to get sent off, and I played it like a lunatic. And I never really realised that until I played as a Christian years later, when I got banned for life for hitting a referee. So I signed pro at 17 for Sheffield Eagles. Gary Eventon signed me. They were going to merge with Doncaster at the time. It never happened, but it took a nucleus of players across. And I signed under Gary, and at that time I think there was 8 Great Britain internationals in that squad, and there were some fantastic players and some fantastic role models. But I think for me personally, like Doncaster was my home club, and that were like family rugby. Whereas when I went to Sheffield, it were kind of, because it were professional, there was no family element to it. And it's like, I was really struggling in my private life. From going from my home where I lived with my mum, I then went to live with my 2 sisters, and one of the households, my brother-in-law, psychologically just destroyed my mind, constantly telling me I was never going to be any good, or and just he was a bully mentally. And the one thing that I took from that is that I used to see him scared of some of these tough guys in our area, in the pub and in the village. So I thought, right, if I can be like tough and hard like they are, and be tougher than them, he'll be frightened of me. So I kind of went on a bit of a crusade then for the next few years of beating all these, older people up who were the names of the area. And by 17, 18, I'd got that name myself in that area. but also I signed a pro rugby contract. So it was as if I was faced with two options: the pro life, professional sports, and a rugby career, or the pub world, the gangsters, the drugs, the fighting. And for the next year or two, I did both, because I had an exceptional talent, but I didn't have character, and I didn't have the discipline to be a pro. But I had a skill that could get me through, and I could turn up to training, you know, half drunk. I could play a match with a hangover, or taking steroids, taking stimulants, just anything just to get through. But I achieved what I'd set out to do, which was become a pro rugby player. But there were I wanted to be accepted. And unfortunately, in the pub environment, I was. And that hand on pat on the back, when I'd hit somebody and jumped into somebody else's battle, I craved that. I craved that attention. And unfortunately, it meant that, within a year and a half of signing my pro rugby contract, I was sent to prison for the first time for headbutting somebody in the nightclub. And I got 8 months in a young offenders institute. So I walked into prison for the first time, at 17, 18 stone, pro rugby player, strong physique, in a suit, bit of a jackal lad, could fight with a few beers in me, but certainly weren't a criminal, certainly weren't streetwise. And I went in there and I got a culture shock. But saying again, that innate desire inside of me to be accepted and wanted, I then looked to the people in the prison environment to be my family, and started to duplicate their behaviour and start to want to be wanted and accepted by them. Within less than a year, I was a heroin addict, a crack addict, begging on the streets of London. I'd destroyed the career, my relationships with my sisters and my family, the area that I was from, where I had this big, tough, hard name. The same people kicked me out of the village, because I was nicking microwaves, and, I'd deteriorated, ridiculously. And then I had to man up, really, in a negative way, because I ended up in Belmarsh prison. I got a 4-year prison sentence, and I walked in there, and they put me on the category A and B unit because I had a robbery charge, which meant I was housed with the most severe criminals in the UK prison system. And I was coming off of heroin, I was all podgy, and just getting the weight back on and stuff, and they used to call me the Yorkshire pudding, because, there was nobody else from Yorkshire. And these were, you had the triad gangs, the Rastafarians, the Albanians, the cartels, the East End gangsters, the murderers, armed robbers, the category A prisons. And in that prison, we used to have how many years on each door. There's people who you walk past life, 25 years, 10, 50. That environment was one of the most hostile, frightening environments you could ever be faced with. So, to survive that, you have to change. And I was always, able to inflict violence, but then I always used to feel guilty, because I was a genuinely nice guy, but I fought out of fear. So again, back to that lost little boy who were fighting and beaten and hurt. And that's why I lashed out, to stop being hurt. But in this environment, two things really had to happen. I had to learn violence sober, because I was always good at violence around a drink, but sober violence, but also sadistic violence, where you can inflict pain and hurt somebody, just for the smallest, slightest thing. And I can remember, on one of the occasions, the officers have given us word that there's a sex offender on the wing, and that person will be maimed for the rest of his life for what we all did to that guy. You know what I mean? And it's like, the stuff that I have seen and witnessed in those environments, I generally believe the environment itself creates PTSD in men, because, you know, like suicide in prison is normal. I can remember one bank holiday weekend there was 9 suicides on a long bank holiday weekend, and the thing was, we was in Brixton then, and we had spiral staircases that went up to it, which had 4 levels, and you'd hear the door go, you'd hear the body bag zip, and then you would hear every clunk of step as that head bounced off, each step being dragged down these spiral staircases. And all the lads used to kick the doors and go mental, because have some respect and everything else. And the officers would be like, you know, F off, get your heads down, you shouldn't have done it, should have done it, you know, and causing us pain, you know, we were like, because there were always that us and them battle between the officers and the convicts. But when you hear that stuff and you see, like, hearing the zip of a body bag and then that clunking of someone's head, it's the most depraving thing you can ever hear or witness, you know, and that became norm for me somewhere along the line. You know, people running out of cells and the blood spurting out the necks and their arms, and, you know, people, you know, somebody could be on the phone and someone will go up with it, sugar and water mixed to your cocktail, hot water, boiling water with sugar, throw it in the face and the skin melts off the faces, and it's like, you just know that when you did it. And that could be over a Mars bar, the smallest offence, you know what I mean? And as men, we take offence quite easily, especially in church. We all get offended, you know, take offence, and I'm not going there no more, pastor didn't say hello to me, and all that different stuff that happens within, you know, in men's lives. You know, we do take offence, you know, and seeing that stuff over and over again, it did something to me on a psychological level. Within the space of probably a year and a half of coming out of that sentence, you know, I went in a boy at 19 years old, I came out a man at 23, hardened physically, mentally, emotionally cut off, and I went back to the village where I was kicked out of, and I was determined to prove that I wasn't a smackhead or whatever, and I just inflicted violence for the next 15 years. I terrorised that community. If anybody went against me in statements, I terrorised them. I broke somebody's jaw for nothing, a trivial thing in a pub, you know. He made a statement, I managed to get somebody to intervene and offered him some money to drop the statement, and then invited him to the pub to, you know, to apologise and stuff, and then I got word off my solicitor that he dropped the statement, so he walked in and I hit him again. You think I'm going to pay you know, your grass and all this kind of stuff, and it was like, this was just, that, for me that was normal. I was so far detached from the reality of what life really was. I was horrible, nasty, violent, intimidating piece of work. And I had a mixed set of morals which were, I could justify every bad thing I did and blame it on somebody else or something else. I could never take responsibility for who and what I was and what I'd become. And again, that deflection and detachment from myself, and then I got a diagnosis of acute disillusional disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, and something else. And I was under a psychiatrist. I was on anti-psychotic medications, antidepressants, in and out of prison, in the courts, beating people up, selling drugs, importing drugs, bashing people for fun, and just crazy lifestyle. And then a pinnacle moment happened following the death of my friend in 2008. I made a decision, I need to make some changes. For the next 5 years, from 2008 to 2013, I was trying to unravel from this world that I'd become so accustomed to. I didn't have a clue how to do it. I got some counselling and went to do an anger management course, did the course, went out for dinner, saw somebody on the street that had, you know, done me a wrong turn, so I chased him through the town and beat him up, and gone back to the course, and it's not working this course, and it was like, everyone were laughing at me, but it was like that for me, it was just normal. Didn't see anything wrong in that. And then a lot of people said to me, why did, our friend kill himself? Why did he do it? A lot of people get asking me that same question over and over again, and I can never answer them. So I don't know, he had everything that you could think of. The money, the glitz, the glamour, all that type of stuff. But obviously inside he was desperately broken. But in 2013, in January, at the turn of the year, 2013, I knew why, because I got into that space mentally. I was on remand for a kidnap and a hostage situation. I was days away from getting my 3 children together for the first time in my life. Because of my lifestyle and the way that I'd lived all those years, I was never able to be a father. Yet it was going to be my birthday on the 12th, and we were going to have a party, and all my children would have been there. And I got remanded on New Year's Day. And it was like, I can remember ringing my sister, and she's like, I am just disgusted in you. Who are you? And just put phone down. And it was like a sledgehammer just hit me. I was like, I could spend the rest of my life in this place. And I can remember walking around the exercise yard, and usually you're bouncing around and full of, getting involved in the skullduggery. But this time I was beaten, I was broken, my head was down, my hands were in my pocket, and I thought, I can't hang myself in case it goes wrong, and I end up like a cripple. I can't do what my friend did with cutting himself in that case it doesn't work. But I know what I'll do, I'll take a load of medication. This prison wing that ran is just full of prescription drugs. I'll go and take as many of people as I can and just go to sleep. And that was the decision I made. And then I went down to the chapel, and there was 3 of us. There was a minister, myself, and another guy, and we started sharing about fathers, husbands' fathers, and our fathers in our lives. And as we prayed and talked about this and got quite emotional, the presence of God just filled that room in such a strong and profound way. It was like, looking back, that was must have been just a huge turning point. But I left there so convicted of the mess that I'd become. And I remember going into the cell, they locked the door behind me, and I dropped onto the floor, just crying like a baby, just not crying, this was tears from inside, just on the floor, just broken, a mess of a man, a wreck. And because I used to think the walls were listening to everything I said, so I would keep me paranoid and delusional, I said, in my mind, God, if you're real, if you're with me, and you're hearing my cries of anguish, replace those pigeons outside there with a white dove. Because I needed something concrete. I wasn't testing God or looking for signs everywhere. What this was is that my mental state was so messed up that I needed a surety. I needed something concrete, but also I needed to know that I wasn't alone, and vulnerable and broken and a heap on the floor. And I went to bed, I got up in the morning, thankfully I had not took my life, and I went to the window, and as I looked out of it, it was in slow motions, the pigeons lifted up and the white bird just sat down, and inside me something just jumped, and I knew without a shadow of a doubt that's exactly what I call a handshake deal. Where I came from, you put your hand out and you shut that way, it was a done deal. No contract, no nothing, a handshake deal. And that's what I've done with God, and I went, that's it. And I came running out of the cell, there is a God, he's real. And everyone was looked at me and thought, he has lost the plot. He's gone, he left gone. Officer, good job, pack your kit, you got to Leeds. a security move. Because I was a violent prisoner, I've been in the system all these years. They used to move me all over because they won't let you get settled because you start getting up to stuff. And they moved me on a security move to Leeds prison. And I can remember walking into that old Victorian prison in 2013. I'd just had an encounter in my cell with Jesus. From the chapel at Doncaster prison, they'd give me a book called Battlefield of the Mind with Joyce Meyer, a notepad, a pencil, and a Rocky bar. I ate the Rocky bar straight away, and I got into my cell, and in Leeds prison, the doorways are really low, you have to stoop under them, and then as you look at your window, because of how high the ceilings are, all you can see is a cross. And I literally just went up to that cross, knelt there and just cried. And wrote stuff in this journal, and burnt it, wrote it and burnt it, and just did this for a day. I didn't even know what I was doing. But looking back, I can see how God's wisdom is, to take me from the environment that I was known, and I had the reputation and the connections in the prison where, we were like our home prison, to take me then to a prison I'd never been to, where my reputation wasn't there. I didn't know the inmates, I didn't know the staff. And I actually then kind of could start this journey off. And the craziest thing is, and this is, like Denver adhered to with the pushback of the adversary, is even on the induction to that prison, a Jehovah's Witness tried to witness to me, who was a member of staff, who should never ever have spoke about faith in that way, but it was as if straight away, as soon as that had been ignited on my life, it was like, wow, we've got to stop this before it even starts. And it's like, I never even realised it until I kind of just thought, I looked at the bin saved, got there the day after, gone to induction the following day, and then it's like a diversion comes straight in. When the test came, put me in a cell with someone who had loads of drugs, and I can remember just clinging on to the bed sheets, taking away. That was my prayer. I didn't know, Lord Jesus, I didn't know all that. We were like, just raw. But thankfully he did. He took him out. And then my next two cellmates were actually Christians. And it was like, I kind of just sat there just talking, having these conversations for the first time that were nothing to do with criminal life and the old world, but just talking about God and Jesus and what's it all about. And I had such a thirst to read the Bible, for knowledge and to want to know more and more. And as I was reading through Joyce Meyer's book, Battlefield of the Mind, and it got to the part about a father abusing her, sexually abusing her, and how she dealt with that, and the level of forgiveness that she showed towards that man, that changed my heart forever. Because in the text it said she got the abuse, she balled it up symbolically and laid it at Jesus' feet, and went on to buying a house, like the next level of forgiveness. But I think that further down the line. But so I thought, wow, okay, my stomach was like a washing machine. It was this fiery ball of anger and hurt and every negative emotion you could think. It was like a furnace just burning all the time. I could never settle. I was just paced up and down, and I was like, in prison I was like a caged, and I just flip out in violence, just for nothing. And that for me was, the cause of the majority of my prison sentences, that part of my character. So I did the same thing. I got this book, got this rage, this negative stuff, hauled it all up, just laid it at the feet of Jesus, got into bed, drifted off to sleep, woke up in the morning, and it was as if a waterfall of love had just released. My heart just started to work again. This stomach had gone. I had such a peace over my life, and this waterfall of love just pouring out my heart. And it was instantaneous. And this was in a prison cell, and nothing, no ministry, no nothing, just another done deal with me and God. And since that day, I have never hit anybody. And when I say that, people are like, you shouldn't be, but I thought most days, at least in a week, there'd be some kind of explosive situation. Especially in a month, there'd definitely be something. And in space of a year, I'd either be incarcerated, or I'd be on the run, or I'd be threatening somebody not to press charges. Violence was a way of life for me. The fact that he took that so instantaneously, was profound. And looking back over the last 11 years since that encounter, I have seen his grace and his mercy and his love poured into a broken man over and over and over again in such a beautiful and profound way. It's so messy, it's so alien to men, to receive love from men. Because, this is the thing that God has done in me, is just all those years of hating people, it's like it's been replaced by helping people. Initially, I used to do that out of guilt and conscience and driven by pain. But the more that God worked in my heart and my life, that's out of compassion and love and wanting to. I have a burden for people, and it's like, in this safe space now today, there's going to be many of you who have got stuff they have never, ever talked about, brought to God, dealt with, be it through shame, be it through guilt, be it through, feeling the failure, all this different stuff. But there is nothing that you have done or have done to you, or any circumstance in your life that does not deal with. There's not one thing. And the thing is we're the blockage in our breakthroughs, because Jesus came for that darkest thing that you've never talked about. That's the reason why he died. And when we don't deal with that, what we do is we re-crucify Jesus over and over again, saying the sacrifice wasn't good enough. But it was good enough. And as men, we have to be strong enough to be vulnerable, to be weak, to let Jesus into those broken, dark parts of us that we never dealt with. Sexual abuse to men is one in 4 men are sexually abused. That's disclosed. So you could double that, because people don't say it. Yeah? Highest statistic is an elder sibling. So someone's brother or sister or whatever, that's the highest statistic. It's not like the dirty uncle or, the old guy sat in a bed, that type of thing. This is what happens. And when it's those closest to us, the issue is because we've got a love as well. So we've got this something dark that's happened to us, but we also love them, and so that's the problem. And the way that I look at that and navigate that is genuine forgiveness doesn't mean you have to have a relationship with that person, or that person needs to be in your life, but acknowledging that behaviour. So I'll say, Lord, I do not acknowledge their behaviour. That behaviour is wrong, but I forgive. I'm going to move on from this that's held me back all these years. Because most of this stuff happens when we're kids. And when you get to your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, and you've carried that all those years, the burden gets heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, and it crushes you. And in your quiet, secret places, in your quiet moments, in those places where it hurts the most, that's where the struggle is. And sometimes, you know, this is the stuff that men don't want to go to. But this message that I bring today can only be that message because my life story is death and destruction and beatings and violence and sexual abuse and drugs and drink and professional sports highs, lows, there's loads of stuff in it, but I could spend a week here telling you all the different stuff. But that side of my life is finished. I'm a man of God, a father, a friend, a person who loves and cares, and God has gone into those darkest places in myself in order to bring that message to you guys, because else what's it all been for? I've wasted my time. That would have been meant all my life would have been futile. But in His grace and in His mercy, God can use all that negative garbage, stinky, horrible things, and turn it for some good, like it says in the book of Romans. Turn all bad things for the greater good. So before I even made a decision to connect, to follow God in that prison cell, broken on that thing, He already knew the plan that He had for my life. And sometimes you've got to go through this stuff in order to go back to help others. And that's why I'm committed. Sometimes bad things happen to good people. It does. It's just how it is. We live in a sadistic, fallen, nasty world. But how you respond to that is your responsibilities. You know what I mean? And it's like, I am duty bound to offer every single man in this room the same opportunities that I've been offered by emotional healing, the scars, the wounds, the traumas. This is the root cause of suicide, of addiction, of, you know, and it can be the trivialist things your big thing could be the most trivialist thing. It really can be. To somebody else's. Not everybody's got the craziness that I have. And I think possibly sometimes that can be a bit of a hindrance because people think, oh, I ain't got none of that. I had a good life and, you know, and I had good parents and this, you know. But there's always stuff. The first girlfriend who said no and rejected you. You know, the loss of a dog or, you know, a parent, or as we start to scratch the surface, this is the stuff, and it's like, you know, when Jesus said he came to bind the brokenhearted. So, you know, I'm very literal as a person. So when you imagine what binding is, it's constantly, so if I bind this man, it's constantly that over. So it's saying, your broken heart gets shattered into pieces. The first thing, you know, for me, my little dog that followed me everywhere, being put to sleep. I can remember cutting all the mattress up with a little penknife. I got such a beating for that. High heel shoe banged off my back, and you know what I mean? And it was like, that dog in my life at that age. And then, you know, first relationship. And me into relationships because my dad had left and my mum had died, and like, wow, I was so needy and desperate. So when they then ended the relationship, again, a spiral. You know, the trauma of seeing your mum dead, and then friends that I lost along the way. Just 2 days ago, the plumber came to my house, serviced the boiler, left the house, and he was going to price a part up, and kill himself. And I went out for a farewell meal with some friends the day after, and we got the message through that, and I went ice cold. But it was still in my house. You know what I mean? Literally, it must have been hours before we made that decision. you know, and I was like, straight away, the people around me, look, mate, there's nothing you could have done about it, you didn't know and stuff, but, you know, it's kind of like, every other day now I hear this stuff. You know, last year nearly broke me as a man. You know, the other day, the stuff that I went through, and I lost someone so close to me that, you know, again, you know, only in his 40s, I used to call it a bit of an hypochondriac. I always had something wrong with him all the time, you know, and, oh, leave it out, mate, you know. You just need to put beer down and live a bit better, eat a bit better and stuff. But he won't, and he won waiting lists. One for his legs, one for his back, one for the, you know, and everything else. But he had something called diverticulosis, which is, you know, it's uncomfortable, but it's not a life-threatening illness. But because he was on the waiting list for this to be treated, and he had other things wrong with him, he kept putting it back and putting it back. His bowel burst, you know, and it killed him. You know, I got a phone call from his phone, from his wife, you know, couldn't make any sense out of it, so I've gone up there, and he's laid there out, you know, thing in his mouth from where they tried to revive him, his belly's out here because of all, you know, to swallow his gases, you know, everything, and there's a police officer sat in the corner because it's kind of an unexplained death, so we have to, I didn't know that's what they did, we had to monitor the situation. So I've gone in, someone who was as close to me as a brother, but also I'm a man of God. So it's kind of like, so I've gone up to him, I speak life in the name of Jesus, oh mate, do I love you, and it's like I'm going from man of faith to mate, and the worst prayer of like, you know, trying to pray to the resurrected and whatever else, but, and then I just knelt beside him, put a cross on his head and said, see you mate, I love you, and just, you know, and watched his broken hearted wife and his kids, and, you know, I can remember they asked me to facilitate the funeral, and, you know, sharing that with people, and sharing who I am today with people of old, you know, what challenging, but also I knew then that, hang on a minute, you know, people are struggling. He was struggling with all the stuff that had happened, so his escape was drink, you know, his escape was, you know, eating, his escape was, you know, not looking after himself, because it's the punishment. You know, it's a lot of the time we punish ourselves for the traumas we've received, or even the stuff we've done, you know what I mean? And everyone's done stuff, and this is the thing, is that I think there's too much emphasis, you know, on kind of categorizing, you know, what sin is or what's acceptable or what's not, and it's kind of like, we're very good at looking at everybody else's stuff and having some kind of judgment, but it's very rare we start to look closely within. And it's like, my hope today for you guys is that, you know, is that you're brave enough to start that process of looking in there and saying, look, Alan, or, you know, I was rejected by my father or my mum, I was beaten by my father, my mum, my aunt, and, you know, I was sexually abused, and I've never talked about it. I've been raped. A man being raped is one of the worst things, because it never gets talked about, you know. And there was a room in my house that all my life I was petrified of, and I never knew why. And I can remember years and years ago, far more years before I got saved, and even going to a hypnotherapist to try and get, you know, go into this room. And that didn't work. There were only a few years ago where I was having ministry, you know, with a pastor from over in America. And we actually, in a time of prayer, we managed to go into that room. And what I saw made me realize, oh wow, this is, you know, this is systematic abuse. This is multiple men raping me as a young boy. It helped because I needed to know what it was, because sometimes you know, the psychology of, you know, we're able, sometimes we can the trauma can just be eradicated because we've got no connection to it, because it's like a self-preservation thing that our bodies can do. But there's always a knowing of it. But it's, you know, for me, I had this knowing and I had the fear, but I didn't know what it was. But when I saw that, I was able to connect with it. But then so it was a comfort. But then the question started: how did they get access to me? Who permitted it? Where were this? But, you know, and it's kind of, and I had to wrestle with this for quite a while. And I thought, you know what? No, you've got to kind of put this to sleep now, really, because it's going to have more of a damaging effect now. You do know than when you didn't. So let's, you know, and again, it's forgiving, it's letting go, but also it's bringing Jesus into that place.